Do you have a kid who needs help? They're dysregulated, and yet you can't get them to help? Well, we're going to talk about how you can lead a horse to water and help them drink. So, when you recognize your kid needs help and you can't get them there, boy, it's hard. Sometimes it's taking those supplements, sometimes it's talk therapy. No matter what is going on, and when you know your kid needs help and you just don't know what to do to help them get them there. And that's what we're going to dive into. As part of our ongoing Behavior Decoded series, we have one of our members in our community who submitted this amazing question to us. What do you do? So let's take a minute and listen to her question about her teenage son.
I guess is what's keeping me up, because no matter what I try to do or try to help, he refuses. I don't know if it's because he doesn't want to recognize that he's a little different than other people, or that he's having difficulties, or I don't know. I can't bring him to therapy or have him talk to anybody because I can drag him there. I mean, even with the products that you have, I can't make him take the vitamins. I can't make him wear something or do something. He has that choice. That's another thing people keep telling me. So I'm really perplexed. And how do I help my kiddo?
As you can see, this is a frustrating experience and she doesn't know what to do. And when we want to really look at what's going on with our kids, why are they resisting? We have to look at what are some of the common reasons that kids, particularly teenagers, avoid treatment. Because I do feel that even when you have really super dysregulated littles, they still trust you and believe you. And that's a big part of it, right? So, like their past experiences, negative treatment experiences, especially when they haven't gotten the right help, which, the majority of people who work one to one with me in our brain behavior reset program, they're seeing, I don't know, a minimum of 5 different providers. I would say that on average, they've probably gone to 15 to 20 before they get to me. So they get burnt out, right? They lose hope. They feel like, wow, is this going to work? And I would say out of everything, that's probably the number one thing that I see. But those negative past experiences they've had, right? Failures, gaslighting by different providers. Hello. And I think that they also start to feel like, where's my privacy, right? That could be a part of it. Lack of, concern about whether they have choice, right? So as things get compounded over time, kids look for control. And this is one means of control, right? And what I have found is that when you give them control in other areas, they're more likely to be amenable to treatment, right? They may have difficulties discussing their personal issues, things like mood issues, OCD. There's a darkness to them. And they don't really always want to talk about them with others, or even if you're in the room, right? They can, have an influence of peers to avoid treatment, even though I do have to say in my area of the country, it's almost like posh. It's like, ooh, who's your therapist? I remember years ago, I had a girl who was like, her mom said she was feeling kind of bad that she didn't have a therapist and she really wanted therapy. I was like, wow, how cool is that? But there still is a stigma very much, in different parts of the country, also culturally, there's stigma about different, kinds of therapy, what you're going to. Like, it's much more acceptable to go to an occupational therapist or a physical therapist, and yet it's still not acceptable to go to psychotherapy, right? There's also, a fear of the unknown and change that comes with it. When you go to therapy, you have to change. A lot of people will come to me and they have no barriers to come to me, hopping on a plane. Even though I work remotely, most of my people come in the one time to meet me and we do a brain map. They often tell me they've been listening to me for years or months. And they're like, I knew that we were going to have to make some real lifestyle changes and I wasn't ready for it. Right. And I thought, and I think it's great wherever you are, you have to make that decision. But, we get it done. We get behavior change when you follow the Dr. Rowe plan. And I think there's also a belief for teenagers, right, as they become autonomous that they can do this on their own and I don't need help. Right. And part of that may be, what are you role modeling? What are the messages are they getting in the universe? Right. And even when you set your teenagers say you can do this on your own, right? I'm a big fan of doing a lot of these things, but you need professional guidance. What kind of information are you getting that you can do this on your own, right? And I always like to talk to teens about, first, how do we resolve this, right? It starts with trust and rapport, right? Whether, that you have with your child, is that trust broken? Is your relationship broken down? And part of this may be that control component. The two times ever that I've had, it was really one time that we had somebody refuse treatment with neurofeedback. Hello, it feels so awesome. Like, who doesn't want to do it? Was totally about control. And this was a very dysregulated mother. And they were looking for control. It was like the only way they had control. And just because your kid is saying no doesn't mean you are the problem. But remember, we always got to take a 360 view and look at why this is happening, right? But is the trust there that you're going to have their back, right? You're going to support them in it. And also, what are you role modeling? Are you taking care of yourself? Because a lot of times, recently we had a situation where, they were like, our kids need help, but we don't. But then they told me it was like just utter chaos at home. And I was like, here's the deal. Dr. Rowe doesn't work with you unless you're getting your own help. I mean, you're literally arguing in front of us virtually. And I'm thinking, I can't even imagine when we're not around. Right. And it was just like everybody was at each other. Good human beings. I don't want you to think this can happen to anybody. Right. And who hasn't been there? Hello, everybody's getting on my nerves today. I'm trying to film and they've decided it's like they're going to have a party in the house, including the cat, right? So you get on each other's nerves. It's not your go-to, but if you're living like that, trust breaks down and whatnot. So it's really important as a strategy to combat this to involve your teens in decision making, right? So sometimes, like, I require a lot of, I require, in order to work with me, we're hacking into the brain. We're not Mickey Mousing around, as Tony likes to say, right? We want to use everything that science shows us to calm, regulate the nervous system, and change behavior. That's what happens when you work with me for 6 months one-on-one, or you're in our dysregulation solution program. You're going to want to make the most out of it. It doesn't mean you do everything. Remember, we don't always jump in the deep end, but we walk into the pool. You got to do something. Otherwise, you're just spinning your wheels, right? So how can we get our kids in that decision making process? And the example I was about to give was that a lot of times I require require some dietary and certainly supplements, right? Sort of basic ones. So when I have somebody who's resistant, I'm like, look, here's the actual written plan. Here's what I'd like to do. What are we willing to do? And I'm working with somebody, actually still see a few kids in counseling. And so I have this great guy that I work with, this young man, and he's very resistant. He has a lot of gastrointestinal things. He's tried a lot. And so we did some actually genetic variant testing that showed what he should and shouldn't have. We went over the list. It gave him food recommendations. And we actually went through, and his mom was like, I can't believe he agreed to this. And I was like, listen, he got to pick. We made choices. And obviously, we have trust and rapport and we're working slowly, right? And it's very slow. It's actually slower than I probably have ever worked with somebody, but we're making progress. And actually, his parents are so thrilled. They're so great. They appreciate the micro, right? We always want to provide, in that case, I provided education and information and as visual as possible. Don't just think because mom said so, or dad said so. we always want to address their fears and concerns. What are side effects? What happens if I don't like that therapist? You know, lay it out and really have conversations. We always want to set realistic goals and expectations. Sometimes I get kids who are like, well, I'm going to do this every day. And I'm like, listen, that'd be great if you did this every day, but is that really realistic? Because you have soccer 3 times a week and whatnot and stuff like that. So I'm like, let's set a minimum and then you can do that, right? So I think that's really helpful for all treatment adherence because remember, kids like and parents are all or nothing. So if I'm not doing it the way that I intended, it's a failure. That's just not how it works. We got to break that cycle. We always want to be as flexible and supportive as we possibly can, right? What kind of support are we providing at home around doing different treatments, doing different therapies? I know sometimes we think we are, but again, how are we leading with it? Are mom and dad arguing about it? Right. I love to actually, there's some research like that shows you like what happens when kids, like little kids, right? Because they don't know how to mask anything. What happens when mom and dad are funny and hugging around each other? And what happens when they're yelling? It's a vastly different appearance of a child. So start thinking about that because we always look for the solution and the magic is so in the little things, right? I saw one of my clients, Hannah, from years ago, yesterday, a couple of days ago at the nail salon. She's going to come in, and she was just telling me it was so awesome to hear how some of the kids that struggle the most, how well they're doing years after working with me. But what we were really talking about is how much the wins are in the little things. And, he was a great example of a teenager who was really resistant, right? And, he's on the spectrum. He has a different way of thinking. And we really met him where he was at and what he could do and what he could hear. And we provided a lot of education and reinforcement. We modeled and practiced mom. And what could I do with mom, right? Dad wasn't even a part of it. What could we do, right? And how can I incorporate things that kids hear, right? Whether it's a TikTok video or different technology, like what language can you have that is your child and where they're at to help with understanding? Is it a book? Start thinking outside the box. It's great. I have one kid who's easy about these things and another kid who's not. And guess what? That's who they are. And so you have to meet them where they're at, right? Sometimes we kids are so resistant, it's okay to be like, listen, you have to love yourself in order to do this. And I'm not going to argue, but then, you're not going to have X, Y, and Z, right? You're not going to have the health that you want. You're not going to be able to go out whenever you want. So sometimes there's some negotiating that has to happen and that's okay too, right? But it can't be punitive. So I hope this got you thinking, and I hope my tribe member, this inspired you to think a little bit differently. And if you're looking for more support, you can go to our solution matcher. You can go to drroseann.com/help. And it's just a great solution matcher that will, one, match you to a solution for where you're at with tons of resources of, all different kinds. But also, you're going to get on our email list. And hello, we write really great, informative emails. So wherever you're at is exactly where you need to be. Just remember, think about meeting your kid where they're at and helping to guide them to those treatments that can be of help.